Maya Chin had been working at Stellar Communications for 3 years, and, in all that time, CEO Marcus Sterling had never once spoken directly to her. She knew this because she had been counting. Every morning when she arrived at the sleek downtown office building, she would catch glimpses of him striding through the marble lobby in his perfectly tailored suits, his dark hair always impeccably styled, his jaw set in that determined line that had graced the cover of Forbes magazine twice in the past year. She worked on the 15th floor in the customer service department, while he occupied the entire top floor like some untouchable king in his glass tower. The closest she had ever come to him was in the elevator once, when he had stepped in just as she was getting off. Their eyes had met for exactly 2 seconds before she mumbled an apology and hurried away, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Maya wasn't the type to harbor unrealistic fantasies about her boss. She was practical, sensible, and fully aware that men like Marcus Sterling didn't notice women like her. At 26, she was pretty in an understated way, with long black hair that she always wore in a neat ponytail and brown eyes that her grandmother used to say were her best feature. But she wasn't the kind of woman who stopped traffic or graced magazine covers herself. Her cubicle was tucked away in the corner of the customer service floor, surrounded by the constant chatter of phone calls and keyboard clicks. She had decorated it with a small succulent plant and a photo of her parents, who had immigrated from Taiwan when she was 5 years old. They had worked 2 jobs each to put her through college, and she was determined to make them proud, even if it meant spending her days dealing with frustrated customers and their technology complaints. The work itself wasn't glamorous, but Maya was good at it. She had a talent for staying calm under pressure and finding solutions that satisfied both the customer and the company. Her supervisor, Janet Morrison, had mentioned several times that Maya was management material, but promotions in customer service seemed to move at the pace of geological change. It was a typical Tuesday morning when everything changed. Maya had just finished helping an elderly gentleman figure out how to reset his internet password when her phone rang again. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. The number wasn't one she recognized, but it had the area code for the city's financial district. Stellar Communications Customer Service, this is Maya speaking. How can I help you today? She said in her practiced professional voice. Finally, someone who sounds like they know what they're doing, came a warm male voice with a slight southern accent. I've been transferred 3 times already, and I'm starting to think your company is run by robots. Maya couldn't help but smile. I'm sorry about that, sir. Let me see what I can do to help you. Can you tell me what issue you're experiencing? Well, it's a bit complicated, the man said, and she could hear the smile in his voice too. I'm trying to set up a new account for my business, but your online system keeps telling me my credit is insufficient, which is interesting because I just bought a small country last week. The joke made Maya laugh despite herself. I'm sure we can sort this out. Can I get your name and the business you're trying to set up service for? David Harrison, Harrison Holdings. We're looking to establish accounts for about 50 locations across the state. Maya's fingers flew across her keyboard as she pulled up the business account application system. Harrison Holdings was definitely in their database, and the credit information she was seeing made her eyes widen. This wasn't just a big account. It was potentially one of the biggest new contracts Stellar Communications had seen all year. I see the issue, Mr. Harrison, she said, scanning through the technical notes. It looks like there was a glitch in our credit verification system this morning. The system is reading your business credit score as 0, which is obviously incorrect. Obviously, David said with amusement. Unless my accountant has been lying to me about the company's financial health, which would be awkward. Maya found herself relaxing as she worked through the technical solution. David Harrison was easy to talk to, funny without being inappropriate, and patient while she fixed the system error. It took nearly 20 minutes to resolve the issue completely, but he didn't seem to mind the time. You know, he said as she was finalizing his account setup, I've dealt with a lot of customer service representatives over the years, and you're definitely in the top 1%. You actually listened to my problem, explained what was happening, and fixed it without making me feel like an idiot. That's rarer than you might think. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. That really means a lot, Maya said, feeling a warm glow of satisfaction. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes. I'm going to be in town next week for some meetings, and I'd love to take you to lunch. You know, to thank you properly for the excellent service. Maya's fingers froze over her keyboard. In 3 years of working customer service, she had never had a customer ask her out. It was against company policy to give out personal information, but something about David's tone was so genuine, so respectful, that she found herself hesitating. That's very kind of you, Mr. Harrison, but I don't think I'm allowed to. I understand if there are company policies, he said quickly. I'm not trying to put you in an uncomfortable position. It's just rare to encounter someone who's both competent and personable in business these days. If you're ever free and interested, I'll be at the Meridian Hotel downtown. The restaurant there makes excellent seafood. Maya glanced around the office, making sure no one was listening to her conversation. Janet was in a meeting with the other supervisors, and her cubicle neighbors were all busy with their own calls. That sounds nice, she heard herself saying. I usually have lunch around noon. Perfect. How about Thursday? I'll make a reservation under my name. After they hung up, Maya stared at her phone for a long moment, wondering what had just happened. She had just agreed to have lunch with a customer, which was definitely against company policy. But David Harrison seemed nice, and it was just lunch. What could go wrong? She was still thinking about the conversation an hour later when Janet returned from her meeting, looking unusually flustered. Maya, I need to see you in my office, Janet said, her voice tight with something that might have been panic. Maya's stomach dropped. Had someone overheard her conversation with David? Had she somehow violated company policy already? Janet's office was a small glass box that overlooked the customer service floor. She closed the door behind them and gestured for Maya to sit down. I just got out of the most bizarre meeting of my career, Janet began, running her hands through her graying hair. Mr. Sterling called an emergency management meeting about a customer complaint. Okay, Maya said slowly, not sure where this was going. Apparently, someone from Harrison Holdings called the executive office directly to complain about the service they received from our department. They said our customer service was incompetent and unprofessional. Maya's blood ran cold. Harrison Holdings? You know them? Hi, I just helped someone from Harrison Holdings this morning. David Harrison. He seemed very satisfied with the service. Janet's frown deepened. That's the strange part. Mr. Sterling is furious about this complaint, but the details don't make sense. He says Harrison Holdings is threatening to take their business elsewhere, but according to our system, they just opened a major new account this morning. Maya's mind was racing. She had spoken to David Harrison for nearly 30 minutes, and he had been nothing but complimentary about her service. Why would someone from the same company be complaining to the CEO? Did Mr. Sterling say who specifically made the complaint? Maya asked. No, he just said someone from Harrison Holdings called him directly. He wants a full investigation of everyone who handled their account today. He's particularly interested in talking to whoever took their initial call. The knot in Maya's stomach tightened. That would be me. Janet's expression softened slightly. Maya, I've never had a complaint about your work. Your customer satisfaction scores are among the highest in the department. But Mr. Sterling is, well, he's not in a good mood about this. He wants to see you in his office at 4 o'clock. Maya glanced at the clock on Janet's desk. It was just past 2. She had less than 2 hours to figure out what had gone wrong and how to explain it to the CEO of the company. Janet, I swear to you, my conversation with Mr. Harrison went perfectly. He was happy with the service, and I resolved his account issue completely. I even have the call logs to prove it. I believe you, Janet said. But something has Mr. Sterling very upset, and when the CEO is upset, everyone feels it. Just be honest about what happened, and hopefully we can clear this up quickly. Maya spent the next hour reviewing every detail of her conversation with David Harrison, looking for anything that could have been misinterpreted or handled better. She printed out the call logs, the account notes, and the technical documentation showing how she had resolved the system error. Everything looked perfect on paper. At 3:30, she took the elevator up to the executive floor for the first time in her 3 years at the company. The 32nd floor was like entering a different world. Gone were the gray cubicles and fluorescent lighting of the customer service department. Here, everything was polished wood, soft lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking views of the city skyline. Marcus Sterling's assistant, a woman in her 40s with silver hair and a crisp white blouse, looked up as Maya approached. You must be Maya Chun, she said with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mr. Sterling is running a few minutes behind, but he'll see you shortly. Please have a seat. Maya perched on the edge of one of the leather chairs in the waiting area, her folder of documentation clutched in her hands. She could hear the low murmur of voices from behind the heavy wooden door of the CEO's office, but couldn't make out any words. At exactly 4 o'clock, the door opened, and Marcus Sterling stepped out, followed by 2 other men in expensive suits whom Maya didn't recognize. They shook hands and exchanged business cards before the visitors headed toward the elevator. For a moment, Marcus Sterling stood in his doorway, and Maya got her first close look at the man who had been a distant figure for 3 years. He was taller than she had expected, probably 6'2", with broad shoulders that filled out his charcoal gray suit perfectly. His dark hair was slightly mussed, as if he had been running his fingers through it, and there were lines of tension around his green eyes that she hadn't noticed in his magazine photos. When his gaze fell on her, Maya felt her breath catch. There was something intense about the way he looked at her, as if he was trying to solve a puzzle, and she was the missing piece. "Ms. Chun," he said, his voice deeper than she had imagined. "Please come in." His office was even more impressive than the waiting area. The wall behind his desk was entirely glass, offering a panoramic view of the city. The other walls were lined with awards, framed newspaper articles, and photos of Marcus with various politicians and celebrities. His desk was a massive piece of dark wood that looked like it could have once graced a medieval castle. "Please, sit down," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs across from his desk. Maya sat, placing her folder carefully on her lap, and trying to project confidence she didn't feel. Marcus Sterling settled behind his desk and studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Ms. Chun, I understand you handled a call from Harrison Holdings this morning." "Yes, sir. I helped David Harrison set up a business account. The call went very well, and I was able to resolve a technical issue with our credit verification system." Something flickered across Marcus's face at the mention of David's name, but it was gone so quickly that Maya wasn't sure she had seen it. "Tell me exactly what happened during that call," he said, leaning back in his chair. Maya opened her folder and referred to her notes as she walked him through the entire conversation, from the initial technical problem to the solution she had implemented. She kept her voice steady and professional, sticking to the facts. "And that was the extent of your interaction with Harrison Holdings?" Marcus asked when she finished. Maya hesitated. Technically, David's lunch invitation had nothing to do with business, but given the circumstances, she wondered if she should mention it. "Yes, sir. The business portion of the call was completed successfully." Marcus nodded slowly, but there was something in his expression that made Maya think he knew she was holding something back. "Ms. Chun, I received a call this afternoon from someone claiming to represent Harrison Holdings. They were very unhappy with the service they received and threatened to take their business elsewhere. Can you explain that?" Maya's confusion must have shown on her face, because Marcus leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "I'm sorry, sir, but that doesn't make sense. Mr. Harrison was very complimentary about the service. He specifically mentioned that I was professional and helpful. I have the call logs if you'd like to review them." "I would." Maya handed over her documentation, watching nervously as Marcus reviewed the technical notes and call timestamps. His frown deepened as he read. According to this, the call lasted 23 minutes and resulted in a successful account setup for a 50-location contract. "That's correct. And David Harrison expressed satisfaction with your service." "Definitely. He was very pleased with how quickly we resolved the issue." Marcus set down the papers and looked at her directly. "Ms. Chun, I want you to think very carefully. Did David Harrison say anything that wasn't strictly business-related?" Maya's heart began to pound. There was something about the way he asked the question, with just a slight emphasis on David's first name, that made her think this was more personal than professional. "He mentioned that I was competent and personable," she said carefully. "Anything else?" Maya took a deep breath. If she was going to get in trouble, it might as well be for telling the truth. "He invited
I
me
understand
to lunch
the urgency, but
to
we need
thank
to
me for the
consider
good
all
service.
options carefully.
This
I
is
know it's against
unacceptable.
We can't afford any
policy,
delays.
But he was very respectful about it, and I didn't give him any personal information." The change in Marcus's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. His jaw tightened, and something dangerous flashed in his green eyes. He asked you out. It wasn't really asking me out, Maya said quickly. He just wanted to thank me for helping him. It was supposed to be professional. Marcus stood up abruptly and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. The tension in the room was suddenly thick enough to cut with a knife. Ms. Chun, he said without turning around. I think there's been a misunderstanding about Harrison Holdings and their relationship with this company. Maya waited, not sure if she was supposed to respond. David Harrison is not a customer, Marcus continued, his voice carefully controlled. He's a competitor. Harrison Holdings has been trying to poach our major clients for the past 6 months. The call you took this morning was likely an attempt to gather information about our services and pricing structure. Maya's stomach dropped. I don't understand. He set up an account. I have the confirmation number. Marcus turned back to face her, and the look in his eyes was unlike anything she had ever seen. It wasn't anger exactly, but something more complex and infinitely more dangerous. The account setup was probably fake, designed to make you think you were helping a legitimate customer. What Mr. Harrison was really after was intelligence about our systems, our processes, and, apparently, access to our employees. The implications of what he was saying hit Maya like a physical blow. She had been manipulated, used as a source of information by someone who was trying to hurt the company she worked for. And she had almost had lunch with him. Sir, I had no idea. I would never intentionally compromise the company. He seemed so genuine, so professional. I'm sure he did. David Harrison is very good at what he does. There was something in Marcus's tone that made Maya look at him more carefully. This wasn't just about business competition. There was something personal in his anger, something that went beyond corporate rivalry. Mr. Sterling, when you said someone from Harrison Holdings called to complain about my service, that was David Harrison himself. He called me directly to say that one of my employees had been unprofessional and incompetent. He specifically requested that disciplinary action be taken against the representative who handled his call. Maya stared at him in shock. But why would he do that? I helped him, and he seemed satisfied. Why would he try to get me in trouble? Marcus's smile was grim. Because he knows it would upset me. The admission hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that Maya was afraid to examine too closely. I don't understand, she said quietly. Marcus returned to his desk and sat down heavily, suddenly, looking tired. David Harrison and I have history, Ms. Chun. Personal history that has nothing to do with business, and everything to do with the fact that some people never learn to lose gracefully. He rubbed his temples as if fighting off a headache. I should have warned the staff about him months ago, but I didn't think he would stoop to involving innocent employees in his games. Maya felt a surge of indignation on behalf of both herself and her boss. So he used me to get to you. It appears so. And now I'm caught in the middle of whatever this personal conflict is. Marcus looked at her sharply, as if hearing something in her tone that surprised him. You're angry? Of course I'm angry. I take pride in my work, Mr. Sterling. I try to help every customer to the best of my ability, and I hate being manipulated. But, more than that, I hate the thought that someone used me as a weapon against you. The words were out of her mouth before Maya realized how personal they sounded. She had just essentially admitted that she cared about Marcus Sterling's well-being, which was probably not the most professional thing to say to the CEO. But Marcus was looking at her with something like surprise, and maybe a hint of something warmer. Ms. Chun, he said slowly. In 3 years of working here, have we ever had a conversation? The question caught her off guard. No, sir. Have I ever noticed your work, acknowledged your contributions, or given you any indication that your efforts were appreciated? Maya felt her cheeks warm. No, sir. Then, why do you care what happens to me? It was a fair question, and one that Maya didn't have a good answer for. Why did she care? Marcus Sterling was her boss, but he was also essentially a stranger. She had admired him from a distance, respected his business acumen and his leadership of the company, but that didn't explain the protective instinct she was feeling. I guess, she said carefully, I don't like bullies. And, from what you've described, David Harrison sounds like a bully who's using underhanded tactics to try to hurt you and the company. That's not right, regardless of whatever personal history you two have. Marcus studied her face for a long moment, and Maya had the unsettling feeling that he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "What did you expect? Someone who would be intimidated by this situation. Someone who would make excuses or try to shift blame. Someone who would be more concerned about keeping her job than about the bigger picture." Maya lifted her chin slightly. "Mr. Sterling, I've been working in customer service for 3 years. I deal with difficult people every day, and I've learned that the best way to handle any situation is with honesty and directness. I made a mistake by agreeing to have lunch with someone I thought was a customer, but I didn't know I was being manipulated. Now that I do know, I want to help fix whatever damage he was trying to cause. And how do you propose we do that?" Maya thought for a moment. "Well, he's expecting me to meet him for lunch on Thursday. What if I do?" Marcus's expression darkened immediately. "Absolutely not. Hear me out," Maya said quickly. "If David Harrison went to all this trouble to get access to me, then he must think I have information he wants or that I could be useful to him somehow. What if we use that? What if I meet him and find out exactly what he's after?" "Miss Chun, David Harrison is not someone you want to get involved with. He's manipulative, ruthless, and he doesn't care who gets hurt in his games." "But I'm already involved," Maya pointed out. "He used me once, and, according to you, he tried to get me fired just to upset you. I'm not going to let him get away with that." Marcus stood up again and began pacing behind his desk. "It's too risky. If something went wrong, what could go wrong? It's lunch in a public restaurant. I'll be careful not to give him any real information, and maybe I can figure out what his endgame is." "You don't understand what you're suggesting. David Harrison has a way of getting under people's skin, of making them trust him even when they know better. He's charming and convincing, and he's very good at exploiting weaknesses." Maya felt a flash of irritation. "Are you saying I'm too weak or too stupid to handle him?" Marcus stopped pacing and looked at her. "I'm saying you're too decent. People like you don't naturally think the way people like him do. You assume others are acting in good faith because that's how you operate. He'll use that against you." "Then, teach me," Maya said impulsively. "Tell me what to watch out for, how to protect myself. Help me understand what kind of person I'm dealing with." Marcus stared at her for a long moment, and Maya could practically see the internal debate playing out on his face. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why are you willing to put yourself in a potentially uncomfortable situation to help a boss who hasn't even noticed you exist until today?" It was another good question, and this time Maya thought she knew the answer. "Because," she said, meeting his green eyes directly, "someone needs to stand up to bullies. And because I think you're a good man who doesn't deserve to be harassed by someone with a personal grudge. And maybe because I'm tired of being invisible." The last part slipped out before she could stop it, and Maya immediately wished she could take it back. But Marcus was looking at her with something like recognition now, as if he was finally seeing not just an employee, but a person. "Ms. Chun," he said quietly, "I can promise you that after today, you will never be invisible to me again." Something in his voice made Maya's breath catch, and suddenly, the spacious office felt much smaller and more intimate. "Does that mean you'll let me help?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a long time, studying her face as if trying to read her thoughts. "If you do this," he said finally, "you do it my way. You don't go in unprepared, and you don't take any unnecessary risks. David Harrison may have started this game, but if we're going to play, we're going to win." Maya felt a thrill of excitement mixed with nervousness. "So we're doing this." "We're doing this," Marcus confirmed. "But first, you and I need to have a much longer conversation about David Harrison and exactly what kind of man you're going to be dealing with." He glanced at his watch. "It's almost 5. Most of the office will be clearing out soon. Are you available to stay late tonight?" Maya nodded without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." Marcus walked around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her chair. Up close, she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes and smell the subtle scent of his cologne. "Ms. Chun," he said, "I want you to understand that once we start." Maya stayed in the office until nearly 9 o'clock that night, listening as Marcus told her things about David Harrison that made her stomach turn. The two men had known each other since college, where they had been roommates and best friends until everything fell apart during their senior year. "We were both business majors," Marcus explained, loosening his tie as the evening wore on. David was brilliant, charismatic, the kind of person everyone wanted to be around. I was more serious, more focused on actually studying than on networking at fraternity parties. Somehow we balanced each other out. Maya had ordered Chinese food from the restaurant across the street, and they were eating it directly from the containers while Marcus told her about the friendship that had turned into a bitter rivalry. What changed? Maya asked, twirling lo mein around her chopsticks. Marcus's expression darkened. A woman named Sarah Matthews. She was in our international business class, smart and beautiful and completely out of my league. I had been working up the courage to ask her out for months, but I was convinced she would never be interested in someone like me. Maya could see where this was going, and her heart sank for the younger version of Marcus who had been too shy to pursue the girl he liked. David found out about my feelings for her and promised he would help me ask her out. He said he would put in a good word for me, maybe arrange some group activities where we could get to know each other better. Marcus set down his container and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights below. Instead, he asked her out himself. They dated for the rest of senior year, and I found out later that he had told her I wasn't interested in her romantically, that I had specifically asked him to make sure she knew we could only be friends. Maya felt a surge of anger on behalf of the college-aged Marcus. That's horrible. What kind of person does that to their best friend? The kind of person who sees other people as game pieces to be moved around for his own benefit, Marcus said bitterly. But that wasn't the worst part. Maya waited, sensing there was more to the story. The worst part was that I believed him when he told me Sarah had never been interested in me anyway. He said he was doing me a favor by saving me from embarrassment, that she had laughed when he mentioned my name. For years, I thought she had rejected me without me even trying. But that wasn't true. Marcus turned back to face her. I found out the truth 5 years later at our college reunion. Sarah told me she had been hoping I would ask her out, that she had been dropping hints for months. She said David had told her I was seeing someone else and wasn't available. Maya shook her head in disgust. So he lied to both of you to get what he wanted. David Harrison has been playing games with people's lives for as long as I've known him. The business rivalry is just his latest attempt to get under my skin. Maya was beginning to understand the depth of Marcus's hatred for David Harrison. This wasn't just about corporate competition. It was about a pattern of manipulation and betrayal that had been going on for over a decade. What happened with Sarah? She asked gently. She was married by then, happily from what I could tell. We talked for a while about what might have been, but you can't change the past. David's interference cost us both a chance at something that could have been special. Marcus returned to his desk and sat down, looking suddenly exhausted. That's why I can't let you meet with him alone, Maya. He has a talent for finding people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. He'll try to charm you, make you trust him, and then use whatever he learns against both of us. Maya had been thinking about this problem all evening, and she had an idea. What if I don't meet with him alone? She suggested. Marcus looked up sharply. What do you mean? The restaurant at the Meridian Hotel is public, but what if you were there too? Not at the same table, but close enough to keep an eye on things. You want me to spy on your lunch date? Maya felt her cheeks warm at his phrasing. It's not a date. It's a business meeting where I'm going to try to figure out what information he's after and what his plans are for stellar communications. Marcus considered this for a moment. It's not a bad idea, actually. If something goes wrong, I'll be right there. And if David sees me, it might rattle him enough that he'll reveal more than he intended. So you'll do it? I'll do it, Marcus agreed. But, Maya, you need to be very careful about what you say to him. Don't give him any real information about our systems, our clients, or our procedures. If he asks direct questions, deflect or give him vague non-answers. Maya nodded. What kind of information do you think he's really after? Marcus leaned back in his chair, thinking. Probably our pricing structure for large accounts, our client retention strategies, maybe information about which clients might be vulnerable to poaching. But, honestly, I think this is more about getting to me personally than it is about business intelligence. Because of what happened in college. Because David has never gotten over the fact that I've been more successful than him professionally. Harrison Holdings is profitable, but they're not in the same league as Stellar Communications. I think he resents the fact that the serious, boring roommate ended up building a bigger empire than the charming, popular one. Maya could understand that kind of resentment, even if she couldn't approve of David's methods for dealing with it. So when I meet with him, I should expect him to ask personal questions about you? Definitely. He'll want to know what kind of boss I am, how the employees feel about me, whether there are any internal problems he could exploit. He might even try to recruit you directly, offer you a job with better pay or benefits. Maya laughed. He could offer me twice what I'm making now, and I wouldn't be interested. Not after what you've told me about him. Marcus smiled, and Maya realized it was the first genuine smile she had seen from him all day. It transformed his entire face, making him look younger and more approachable. You know, he said, I'm starting to think David may have underestimated you. What do you mean? He probably expected to deal with someone naive and easily manipulated. Someone who would be flattered by his attention and willing to share information without thinking about the consequences. Instead, he's going to be facing someone who knows exactly who he is and what he's trying to do. Maya felt a flutter of nervousness at the responsibility he was placing on her. What if I mess this up? Marcus stood and walked around his desk until he was standing beside her chair. Maya, you've already proven that you can think on your feet and handle pressure. You figured out that something was wrong with his story before I even told you who he really was. Trust your instincts. The way he said her first name made her look up at him, and she was struck again by how different he seemed when they were alone like this. The intimidating CEO facade had dropped away, revealing someone who was intelligent, passionate, and surprisingly vulnerable when it came to the subject of David Harrison. Marcus, she said, testing his name on her lips. Can I ask you something personal? After everything I've told you tonight, I think we're past the point of formal boundaries. Are you afraid of him? The question seemed to surprise Marcus. He thought about it for a moment before answering. Not afraid exactly, but I am concerned about what he might do if he feels cornered or desperate. David has always been willing to cross lines that most people wouldn't cross, and I don't want him to hurt you as a way of getting to me. But you're willing to let me try this anyway, because I think it might be the only way to end this. If we can figure out what his endgame is, we can get ahead of it and stop him before he does real damage to the company or to innocent people like you. Maya stood up, bringing them face to face again. I'm not that innocent, you know. I can take care of myself. Marcus reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so unexpected and intimate that Maya's breath caught. I'm beginning to realize that, he said softly. Maya, I want you to know that regardless of how this situation with David turns out, I'm grateful that you're willing to help. And I'm sorry that it took a crisis for me to notice what a remarkable person I have working for me. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, and Maya found herself leaning slightly closer to him without conscious thought. For a moment, she thought he might kiss her, and she wasn't entirely sure how she would react if he did. Then, Marcus stepped back, running a hand through his dark hair and looking suddenly professional again. It's getting late, he said. You should probably head home and get some rest. Thursday is going to be a long day. Maya felt a mixture of relief and disappointment as the moment passed. What time should we plan to meet at the restaurant? The reservation is for noon. I'll get there around 11:30 and find a table with a good view of the dining room. You just act naturally and let David lead the conversation. Try to get him to tell you what he's really after. Maya gathered her purse and the empty food containers, suddenly feeling awkward now that the evening was ending. Marcus, she said as she reached the door, what if this doesn't work? What if I can't get him to reveal anything useful? Marcus walked to the door and opened it for her. Then, at least we'll know we tried. And Maya? Yes. Be careful. Promise me that if anything feels wrong or unsafe, you'll leave immediately. I promise. Maya rode the elevator down to the ground floor, her mind spinning with everything that had happened in the past few hours. When she had gotten up that morning, she had been just another anonymous employee in the customer service department. Now she was working directly with the CEO to uncover a competitor's plans and potentially end a decade-old personal vendetta. As she walked through the empty lobby toward the parking garage, Maya caught a glimpse of herself in the polished marble walls. She looked the same as always, but she felt completely different. For the first time in her life, she was part of something important, something that mattered beyond customer satisfaction surveys and call resolution times. And Marcus Sterling had looked at her like she was someone worth knowing. Maya spent the next day preparing for her lunch with David Harrison. She researched everything she could find about him online, studying photos and reading interviews to get a sense of his personality and communication style. She also practiced deflecting questions and giving non-committal answers to the types of queries Marcus had warned her about. By Thursday morning, she felt as ready as she could be. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a professional but attractive navy blue dress that was appropriate for a business lunch, but not so formal that it would seem out of place for a customer service representative. She had left her hair down and worn slightly more makeup than usual, wanting to look like someone worth David's continued attention without overdoing it. The Meridian Hotel was in the heart of the financial district, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that catered to wealthy business travelers. Maya had never been inside before, and she felt slightly intimidated by the opulent lobby with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and uniformed staff. The restaurant was on the second floor, accessible by a curved staircase that was probably designed to make an impressive entrance. Maya checked her watch as she climbed the stairs, 12:05. She was intentionally a few minutes late, not wanting to appear too eager. The hostess, a beautiful woman in her 20s with perfectly styled blonde hair, greeted her with a practiced smile. "Good afternoon. Do you have a reservation? I'm meeting someone here." The reservation should be under Harrison. The hostess checked her computer screen. "Of course. Mr. Harrison is already seated. Right this way." Maya followed her through the dining room, scanning the other tables for any sign of Marcus. The restaurant was busy with the lunch crowd, mostly business people in expensive suits having meetings over gourmet salads and seafood. She spotted Marcus at a corner table near the window, partially hidden behind a menu but with a clear view of the dining room. He was wearing a different suit than he had been the day before, a dark blue that made his eyes look even more green. He glanced up as she passed, giving her the slightest nod of acknowledgement. David Harrison was seated at a table in the center of the room, and Maya's first thought was that he was exactly the kind of man she would have expected Marcus to hate. He was handsome in an obvious way, with carefully styled brown hair, perfect teeth, and an expensive tan that spoke of too much time on golf courses and not enough time actually working. He stood as she approached, his smile wide and practiced. "Maya," he said, extending his hand to shake hers. "I'm so glad you could make it. You look lovely." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. This is a beautiful restaurant. Please, call me David. And yes, the Meridian has one of the best chefs in the city. I think you'll be impressed with the menu." David held her chair as she sat down, playing the perfect gentleman. Maya could see why he had been popular in college. He had the kind of easy charm that made people want to like him immediately. "I have to admit," Maya said as she settled into her chair, "I'm not used to customers taking me to lunch. This is a first for me." David laughed, a warm sound that seemed genuine. "Well, exceptional service deserves exceptional recognition. I can't tell you how refreshing it was to deal with someone who actually understood the problem and knew how to fix it." The waiter appeared to take their drink orders, and David recommended the restaurant's signature cocktail. Maya opted for sparkling water, wanting to keep her head clear for whatever was coming. "So tell me about yourself, Maya," David said once the waiter had left. "How long have you been with Stellar Communications?" 3 years, Maya replied. "I started right after college." "And you enjoy the work?" Maya shrugged. "It has its challenges, but I like helping people solve their problems. There's satisfaction in taking someone who's frustrated or confused and leaving them happy with the resolution." "I'm sure there is. But don't you ever feel like you're capable of more? Someone with your intelligence and people skills could probably do very well in a more senior position." Here it was, the first attempt at flattery and recruitment that Marcus had warned her about. "I'm hoping to move up within the company eventually," Maya said carefully. "Stellar Communications has a good track record of promoting from within." "Does it? That's interesting. I've always wondered what it's like to work for Marcus Sterling. He has quite a reputation in the business community." Maya kept her expression neutral. "What kind of reputation?" David leaned forward slightly, his voice taking on a confidential tone. "Well, he's certainly successful, I'll give him that. But I've heard he can be demanding. Some people say he's brilliant, but cold, that he doesn't really care about his employees as individuals. Maya thought about the man who had worked late into the evening with her, sharing Chinese food and personal stories. The man who had been concerned about her safety and grateful for her help. I haven't found that to be true, she said. In my experience, he's been very professional and fair. Really? That's good to hear. I suppose you wouldn't have much direct contact with him in customer service, though. Not typically, no. David nodded, as if this confirmed something he had been thinking. It must be frustrating, being stuck in a department where your talents aren't really recognized. I imagine someone like you could do very well in a more dynamic environment. What do you mean? Oh, just that there are other companies in this industry that are always looking for talented people. Companies that might offer better opportunities for advancement, better compensation, more recognition for exceptional work. Maya pretended to consider this. Are you offering me a job, David? David laughed, but Maya noticed that it seemed less genuine this time. Well, I wasn't planning to, but now that you mention it, Harrison Holdings is always interested in recruiting top talent. Someone with your skills and inside knowledge of the industry could be very valuable to us. Inside knowledge. Understanding of how the major players operate, what their strengths and weaknesses are, that sort of thing. Maya felt a chill as she realized what he was really asking for. He wasn't just trying to recruit her. He was trying to buy information about Stellar Communications. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable sharing proprietary information about my current employer, she said carefully. David's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. Of course not. I wouldn't expect you to violate any confidentiality agreements. I was thinking more about general industry insights, best practices, that sort of thing. The waiter returned to take their food orders, giving Maya a moment to think about how to respond. She could see Marcus from the corner of her eye, apparently absorbed in his own meal, but clearly listening to every word. Maya said once the waiter had left again. I'm curious about something. You called yesterday to complain about my service, but then you invited me to lunch to thank me for my service. That seems contradictory. David's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. I'm sorry, what are you talking about? My supervisor told me that someone from Harrison Holdings called the executive office to complain about how they were treated by customer service. But you seem very happy with how I handled your call. For the first time since she had met him, David looked genuinely surprised. Then, his face hardened, and Maya caught a glimpse of the ruthless businessman that Marcus had described. You spoke to your supervisor about our call. Of course. When a customer complains directly to the CEO about my work, I need to understand what went wrong so I can do better in the future. David was quiet for a long moment, and Maya could practically see him recalculating his approach. Maya, he said finally, I think there may have been some miscommunication. I never called to complain about your service. Maya tilted her head, pretending to be confused. Then who did? I have no idea. Maybe someone else from my company? Although I can't imagine why they would do that. Maya didn't believe him for a second, but she nodded as if his explanation made sense. That is strange, she agreed. Well, I'm glad it wasn't you. I was worried that I had somehow offended you without realizing it. David seemed to relax slightly, apparently thinking he had successfully deflected her suspicions. Not at all. In fact, I was hoping we could discuss the possibility of working together more directly. What do you mean? David glanced around the restaurant as if checking to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer to Maya. Hypothetically speaking, if someone were interested in learning more about Stellar Communications operations, what would be the best way to go about that? Maya felt her pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of information Marcus had hoped she could get. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking. Let's say a competitor wanted to understand how Stellar Communications maintains such high client retention rates, or how they price their enterprise accounts, or which clients might be dissatisfied enough to consider switching providers. Hypothetically, how would someone go about gathering that information? Maya stared at him, no longer pretending to be confused. You're asking me to spy on my own company. David sat back in his chair, his mask of charm finally slipping completely. I'm asking you to be realistic about your career prospects. You're a smart woman, Maya. You must see that you're wasting your potential in that customer service cubicle. I could offer you a position with real responsibility, real money, and real appreciation for your abilities, in exchange for betraying the company that gave me my first job out of college. in exchange for helping me level the playing field against a company that doesn't appreciate what they have in you. Maya felt genuinely angry now, not just at David's proposition, but at the way he was trying to manipulate her emotions to get what he wanted. And what makes you think Stellar Communications doesn't appreciate me? David's smile turned ugly. Because I know Marcus Sterling, Maya. I've known him for 15 years, and I can guarantee you that he doesn't care about you as anything more than a replaceable employee. You're a number to him, a productivity statistic. He'll use your loyalty and dedication for as long as it serves him, and then he'll discard you without a second thought. Maya thought about Marcus working late with her the night before, about the way he had looked at her when he promised she would never be invisible to him again, about the gentle way he had touched her face when he told her she was remarkable. "You're wrong," she said quietly. David laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Am I? Tell me, Maya, in 3 years of working for Stellar Communications, how many times has Marcus Sterling spoken to you directly?" Maya felt her cheeks burn, because David was right about that part. Until yesterday, Marcus had never noticed her existence. "I thought so," David said, misinterpreting her silence. "You're nothing to him, Maya. But you could be something important to me. You could be a partner, not just an employee." Maya stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor loud enough to draw attention from nearby tables. "This lunch is over," she said, reaching for her purse. David grabbed her wrist, his fingers tight enough to bruise. "Sit down, Maya. We're not done talking. Let go of me. Not until you listen to what I'm offering you. This is your chance to make something of yourself, to get out of that dead-end job, and work for someone who values what you bring to the table." Maya tried to pull her wrist free, but David's grip tightened. She was starting to panic when suddenly, Marcus appeared beside their table, his green eyes blazing with fury. "Take your hands off her," he said, his voice low and dangerous. David looked up in shock, then slowly released Maya's wrist. Well, if it isn't Marcus Sterling himself. What a surprise. The only surprise is that you thought you could get away with harassing my employee in broad daylight." David stood to face Marcus, and Maya could feel the tension crackling between the two men like electricity. "Your employee?" David said with mock surprise. "I thought you didn't even know Maya existed." "Isn't that right, Maya? Wasn't I just telling you how invisible you are to your beloved CEO?" Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "Maya is one of my most valued employees, which you would know if you had done your research properly instead of making assumptions based on your own limited experience." "Valued employee?" David laughed. "Come on, Marcus. We both know you had no idea who she was until I forced you to pay attention to her. I did you a favor, really. Now you can pretend to care about her just long enough to make sure she doesn't take my offer." Maya had heard enough. She stepped between the two men, her own anger finally overriding her nervousness. "Stop it," she said firmly. "Both of you. I'm not a prize to be won or a pawn to be moved around your personal chessboard. David, your offer is insulting and unethical, and I wouldn't work for you if you offered me your entire company. Marcus, thank you for the rescue, but I can handle myself." She turned back to David, who was staring at her with something like respect for the first time since she had arrived. "And just so we're clear," she continued, "Marcus Sterling is twice the man you'll ever be. Maybe if you spent half as much time building your own company as you do trying to tear down his, Harrison Holdings might actually be worth something." With that, Maya walked away from both men, her head held high and her heart pounding. She made it halfway across the dining room before she realized that Marcus was following her. "Maya, wait." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I meant what I said, Marcus. I don't need to be rescued." "I know you don't," he said, coming around to face her. "What you just did back there was incredible. I've never seen anyone shut David down like that." Maya looked back toward their table, where David was still standing, looking stunned and furious. "I probably made things worse, didn't I? Now he knows that we're working together." Marcus smiled, and it was the same genuine smile that had transformed his face the night before. "Maya, you just made things better in every possible way. David came here expecting to manipulate a naive employee into betraying her company. Instead, he got publicly humiliated by someone who saw right through his schemes. He's going to think twice before trying something like this again." Maya felt some of her anger drain away, replaced by exhaustion. I can't believe I almost fell for his act on the phone. He seemed so nice, so genuine. The elevator ride back to Stellar Communications was silent, but Maya was acutely aware of Marcus standing beside her. The small space felt charged with unresolved tension from their confrontation with David, and she could feel Marcus watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, Marcus turned to her instead of getting off. "Come up to my office," he said. "We need to talk about what just happened." Maya followed him through the elegant corridors, past his assistant's empty desk, and into the spacious corner office that had intimidated her so much just 2 days ago. Now it felt familiar, almost welcoming. Marcus closed the door behind them and immediately turned to face her, his green eyes searching her face. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you when he grabbed your wrist?" Maya looked down at her wrist, where faint red marks were already fading. "I'm fine." It was more shocking than painful. "Maya, I am so sorry. I should never have let you go through with this. I knew David was capable of being aggressive, but I thought he would at least maintain the pretense of being a gentleman in a public place." Maya sank into one of the chairs across from his desk, suddenly, feeling the full weight of what had just happened. "It worked though, didn't it? We found out what he was really after." Marcus sat on the edge of his desk, close enough that she could see the worry lines around his eyes. "We found out that he was trying to recruit you as an industrial spy, yes. But we also revealed our hand. Now he knows that we were working together, and that changes everything." "Changes it how?" Marcus ran a hand through his dark hair, messing up the perfect style. "David doesn't like to lose, Maya. He's going to see what happened today as a personal humiliation, and he's going to want revenge. Not just against me, but against you too." Maya felt a chill of apprehension. "What kind of revenge?" "I don't know yet, but David has a long memory and a creative imagination when it comes to getting even with people who embarrass him. We need to be prepared for him to escalate this situation." Maya thought about the expression on David's face as they had left the restaurant, the cold fury that had replaced his practiced charm. "Maybe I should look for another job," she said quietly. "If staying at Stellar Communications puts me at risk." "No." Marcus's voice was sharp enough to make Maya look up at him in surprise. "Absolutely not. I'm not going to let David Harrison drive away the best employee I have because of his personal vendetta against me. Marcus, I work in customer service. I'm hardly your best employee." Marcus slid off his desk and moved to the chair next to hers, turning it so he could face her directly. "Maya, let me tell you something. In the 3 years you've been working here, your customer satisfaction scores have been consistently in the top 5%. Your call resolution rate is the highest in your department. You've never missed a day of work, never had a complaint filed against you, and you've actually had 3 customers specifically request to speak to you again for follow-up issues." Maya stared at him. "How do you know all that?" "Because after our conversation on Tuesday night, I asked HR to pull your file. I wanted to understand what kind of person I was asking to help me with David." Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, bringing him close enough that Maya could see the gold flecks in his green eyes. "What I found out was that I've been an idiot for 3 years. You've been right here in my own company, doing exceptional work and going above and beyond for our customers, and I never took the time to notice. That's on me, not on you." Maya felt her heart rate increase at his proximity and the intensity of his words. "Marcus, I also found out that you have a business degree from State University, that you graduated magna cum laude, and that you speak 3 languages fluently. You're overqualified for your current position, and we've been wasting your potential." Maya didn't know what to say. She had assumed that Marcus's newfound attention was temporary, a result of the crisis with David that would fade once the situation was resolved. "What are you saying?" Marcus reached out and took her hands in his touch warm and reassuring. "I'm saying that regardless of what happens with David Harrison, your life at this company is going to change. I want to offer you a position in corporate development, working directly with me on strategic initiatives and client relationships." Maya's breath caught. That would be a huge promotion. It's a position you're qualified for and one that you've already proven you can handle. What you did today, the way you handled David, the insight and courage you showed, that's exactly the kind of thinking I need on my team. Maya looked down at their joined hands, her mind reeling with the implications of what he was offering. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course. Is this job offer about my qualifications, or is it because you feel guilty about putting me in danger with David? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when Maya looked up at him, his expression was unreadable. Both, he said finally. I do feel responsible for what happened today, and I want to make sure you're protected going forward. But, Maya, I wouldn't offer you a position you couldn't excel at just to assuage my guilt. That wouldn't be fair to you or to the company. Maya appreciated his honesty, even if it wasn't exactly what she had hoped to hear. And there's something else, Marcus continued, his voice dropping lower. Something I need to tell you that has nothing to do with David Harrison or job promotions or company politics. Maya's pulse quickened at the change in his tone. What? Marcus released her hands and stood up, walking to the window and looking out at the city skyline. Maya, I haven't been completely honest with you about why this situation with David affects me so much. What do you mean? Marcus turned back to face her, and there was something vulnerable in his expression that she had never seen before. When David told me that someone from my company had been unprofessional to him, when he specifically requested that disciplinary action be taken against you, I felt something I wasn't expecting. What did you feel? Protective, furious, like someone was threatening something that belonged to me. Maya's heart began to pound. Marcus, I know how that sounds, he said quickly. I know you don't belong to me, and I'm not trying to suggest that you do. But, in that moment, when I thought someone was trying to hurt you, I realized that you had become important to me in a way that went beyond professional respect. Maya stood up slowly, her legs feeling unsteady. How long have you felt this way? Marcus gave her a rueful smile. Honestly, I think I've been attracted to you for a long time, but I told myself it was inappropriate to notice an employee that way. It was easier to pretend you were invisible than to deal with the fact that I found myself looking for you in the lobby every morning. Maya felt her breath catch. You looked for me? Every day? I told myself I was just observing employee behavior, making sure everyone was arriving on time, and seemed engaged with their work. But, really, I was hoping to catch a glimpse of you. Maya thought about all the mornings she had hurried through the lobby, hoping for a chance encounter with the CEO, who never seemed to see her. I looked for you too, she admitted. I used to time my elevator trips to try to run into you. Marcus's smile widened. You did. I had such a crush on you. Not just because you're successful and attractive, but because of the way you carried yourself, the way you treated people with respect even when they were just security guards or maintenance workers. I used to make up stories about what it would be like to have a real conversation with you. Marcus moved closer to her, his eyes intense. And what did you imagine those conversations would be like? Maya felt her cheeks warm, but she didn't look away. I imagined that you would be smart and funny and passionate about your work. I imagined that you would listen when I talked, and that you would make me feel like my opinions mattered. And how do I measure up to your imaginary version? Maya took a step closer to him, eliminating most of the space between them. Better. So much better. The Marcus in my head never made me feel brave enough to stand up to someone like David Harrison. He never made me believe that I could be more than I thought I was. Marcus reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. Maya, I want you to know that what I'm feeling for you has nothing to do with gratitude or guilt or the adrenaline from today's confrontation. I'm falling for you because you're brilliant and brave and beautiful, and because you see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. Marcus, I've been falling for you since the first day I started working here. Not the CEO version of you, but the real you. The one who works late because he cares about doing things right, who remembers the names of the cleaning crew, who built this company because he wanted to prove that business could be both profitable and ethical. Marcus leaned his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her lips. Maya, I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. It will complicate everything. Your job, our working relationship, the way other people see both of us. Maya reached up and placed her hands over his, holding them against her face. I know, and I don't care. Marcus, life is complicated anyway. At least this complication would make me happy. Marcus studied her face for a long moment, as if memorizing every detail. Are you sure? Because once I kiss you, I'm not going to be able to pretend that you're just another employee. You'll be the woman I'm in love with who happens to work for my company. Maya's heart stopped. You're in love with me? Marcus smiled, and it was soft and tender and full of emotion. I'm completely in love with you. I probably have been for months, but I was too stupid and too scared to admit it to myself. Maya stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring 3 years of suppressed longing into the contact. Marcus responded immediately, his arms coming around her and pulling her against him as if he had been waiting his entire life for this moment. The kiss was everything Maya had imagined and more. Marcus was gentle but passionate, reverent but hungry, and when he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Maya, he whispered against her lips, I love you. I love you too, she whispered back, and the words felt like coming home. They might have stood there kissing forever if Marcus's phone hadn't buzzed with an urgent text message. He reluctantly released her to check it, and his expression immediately darkened. What is it? Maya asked. Marcus showed her the screen. The message was from an unknown number, but the content was clearly from David Harrison. Congratulations on your new romance. I hope you'll both be very happy together. Consider this my wedding gift. By Monday morning, every major client of Stellar Communications will have received a detailed report about the company's questionable business practices and financial instability. Some of the information might even be true. Enjoy explaining that to your board of directors. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. He's going to lie to your clients? Marcus was already reaching for his office phone. He's going to do whatever it takes to destroy my reputation and hurt the company. This is exactly the kind of escalation I was afraid of. What can we do? Marcus dialed a number and waited for someone to answer. Rebecca? It's Marcus. I need you to call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. We have a situation that requires immediate damage control. He hung up and turned back to Maya, his expression grim. Maya, I want you to go home. Pack a bag and go stay with a friend or family member for the weekend. David is unpredictable when he's angry, and I don't want him to try to get to me through you. Maya shook her head. I'm not running away, Marcus. If David wants a fight, then let's give him one. This isn't your fight anymore. This is between him and me, and it's about to get very ugly. Maya moved closer to him, placing her hands on his chest. Marcus, you said it yourself. Once we cross this line, I wouldn't be just another employee. Well, we crossed it. That means your fights are my fights now. Marcus covered her hands with his own. Maya, you don't understand what you're asking for. David has resources, connections, and a willingness to destroy innocent people to get what he wants. I can't protect you from all of that. Then, don't try to protect me. Let me help you fight him instead. Marcus searched her face, and Maya could see the internal struggle playing out in his green eyes. If you stay, he said finally, if you help me with this, it's going to change everything. Your life, your career, your safety, none of it will ever be the same. Maya smiled and reached up to kiss him softly. Marcus, my life changed the moment I answered David Harrison's phone call. Everything since then has just been figuring out which side I'm on. And which side is that? Your side. Always your side. Marcus pulled her closer, holding her tightly against him. Okay, he said into her hair. But we do this together as partners. No more trying to protect each other by keeping secrets or taking unnecessary risks. Partners, Maya agreed. Marcus's phone buzzed again with another text from David. Oh, and Marcus? You might want to check tomorrow's financial news. I have a feeling there will be some interesting stories about Stellar Communications management practices. Maya felt Marcus tense against her. He's planning something for tomorrow. Then, we better get to work, Maya said, stepping back and straightening her shoulders. What's our first move? Marcus smiled at her, and despite the seriousness of the situation, there was love and admiration in his eyes. Our first move is to call every major client personally and give them our side of the story before David can poison them against us. That's going to take all night. Then, it's a good thing I'm in love with someone who's willing to work late. Maya laughed despite herself. You know, when I fantasized about spending the evening alone with you in your office, this isn't exactly what I had in mind. Marcus kissed her forehead. Maya Chun, Stick with me, and I promise you'll never be bored again. As they settled down to begin making calls to clients, Maya reflected on how much her life had changed in just 3 days. She had gone from an invisible customer service representative to the girlfriend of the CEO and a key player in a corporate battle that could determine the future of the company. It wasn't the quiet, predictable life she had planned for herself, but as she watched Marcus prepare for the fight of his professional life, she knew she wouldn't trade it for anything. She was exactly where she belonged, standing beside the man she loved and ready to face whatever came next. David Harrison had started this war, but Maya was confident that he had underestimated both his opponents. Marcus Sterling was brilliant, determined, and fighting for everything he had built. And Maya Chun was no longer the naive girl who could be manipulated with flattery and false promises. Together, they were going to show David Harrison that some battles weren't worth starting, and that love and loyalty were more powerful than manipulation and revenge. The war was just beginning, but Maya had never felt more ready for anything in her life. That's his specialty. But you figured out the truth in the end, and that's what matters. Marcus placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Come on, let's get out of here before David decides to cause a scene. As they walked toward the restaurant exit, Maya caught one last glimpse of David Harrison. He was watching them leave, and the expression on his face was a mixture of rage and something that might have been grudging admiration. Maya had the feeling that this was far from over, but for the first time since this whole situation began, she felt like she was on the winning side. And Marcus Sterling was looking at her like she was the most impressive person he had ever met. Down this path, there's no going back. David Harrison will see you as a threat, and he won't hesitate to try to hurt you to get to me. Are you sure you want to get involved in something this personal? Maya stood up, bringing them close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Mr. Sterling, he already made it personal when he used me. I'm not going to hide in my cubicle and hope he goes away. If you're willing to trust me with this, then I'm in. Marcus studied her face for another moment, then extended his hand. In that case, Ms. Chun, welcome to the game. As Maya shook his hand, she couldn't help but notice how warm and strong his fingers were, or how his touch sent an unexpected jolt of electricity up her arm. Whatever she had gotten herself into, she had the feeling her quiet, predictable life was about to become much more complicated. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Sterling was looking at her like she mattered.